We are counting down the days until The Force Awakens hits theaters, and in that time, countless theories and speculations have hit the interwebs. There seems to be 4 major theories that are floating around right now, and we are going to break down each one of them. The first major theory is that the hype for Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, was just as big as the hype and excitement around Episode 7, The Force Awakens. So therefore, you have to temper your expectations and be prepared to be disappointed. The second major theory is questioning the extent that Finn and Rey are Force sensitive. The third major theory centers on who Rey is crying or mourning over in the final The Force Awakens trailer. And the fourth major theory is, has Luke turned to the dark side? We are going to start with a comparison of the final trailers for The Force Awakens and The Phantom Menace. So what's similar about these two trailers? Well, the thing that's very similar about these two trailers, both the final trailers for The Force Awakens and The Phantom Menace, is all the excitement and hype that surrounds both of them. If you check out the excitement and the hype for The Phantom Menace back in 1998 and 1999, if you listen to some of the reactions that were going on, as we'll show you right now, it was incredible. The same thing is going on now for The Force Awakens. It's a huge, huge aura of excitement going on for this film. People are really amped for it, just like they were back in 1998 and 1999 for The Phantom Menace.
Oh my God!
But what's different about these two trailers? Instead of going through every single little detail that's different about these two trailers, because it would just take an eternity, I've broken down the analysis into 3 major themes. 1, characters, 2, actions, and 3, dialogue. Starting off with characters. In the last Phantom Menace trailer, it took us nearly 18 seconds for us to be introduced to our major characters. And the first character we meet is Queen Amidala. She's on screen for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then we're whisked away to the next conflict. She says something very monotone and bland and boring, much like the rest of the film. And that gives us some kind of foreshadowing of exactly what kind of movie we are in for. With The Force Awakens, we meet Rey in the first shot. She's already a much more interesting character. We see her interesting lifestyle and her aspirations, and we learn this even with very few words spoken. Notably, the trailer spends nearly 25 seconds on Rey alone. Also, 13 seconds are spent on Finn, and 15 seconds are spent on Kylo Ren. In The Phantom Menace, it takes nearly 47 seconds for us to meet Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, only for Obi-Wan Kenobi to say something stupid. Therefore, I think you can say that there's a clear departure on how these two films handle their characters. In The Phantom Menace, it was pretty clear from the trailer, now that we have 20/20 hindsight, that there was going to be a real problem with character development, because even the trailer showed no character development whatsoever. This appears to be very contrary to The Force Awakens, that appears to be very character driven. The next theme, actions. In the Phantom Menace trailer, there is a distinct commonality that clearly plays out in the movies, and that is the actions that the characters take. First, there is a tremendous amount of sitting that goes on in the trailer. Generously, there's around 6, if not 8 scenes in the trailer that is completely dedicated to people sitting. Then there are 20 scenes of people just standing around. And there are only 12 scenes of people taking any action whatsoever. In The Force Awakens, the tone is drastically different. There are only 3 scenes of people sitting. There are only 6 scenes of people standing around. There are 14 scenes of people taking action. This information gives us some very interesting data. For example, in The Phantom Menace, there is a 4.5 to 1 ratio of action scenes to sitting scenes. That's a pretty tight margin. In the Force Awakens trailer, that ratio is 12 to 1. Thus, there is a much broader, much better chance of seeing a lot more action and people doing things in this movie rather than just sitting around or standing around and talking and walking, which the prequels are known for. And finally, dialogue. In The Phantom Menace, there are 22 instances of dialogue spoken throughout the trailer. Compare that with The Force Awakens, where there are only 5 instances of dialogue spoken. So, overall, while indeed the hype surrounding both these trailers and both these movies is very similar, the motivation is drastically different because we're talking about 2 fundamentally different films. People were excited about The Phantom Menace when it was coming out because there wasn't a new Star Wars film in 16 years. People, I think, are excited about The Force Awakens because it looks like it's going to be a really good movie. The next theory is whether Finn is Force sensitive or a Jedi. So what is my evidence in chief that Finn is a Jedi or at least Force sensitive? They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And in the Star Wars poster, he is clearly using a lightsaber, and he's throwing down against Kylo Ren. So he is using a lightsaber. All right, I get it. You know what? I know the argument. Just because you use a lightsaber does not make you a Jedi, it doesn't make you a Sith, and it doesn't make you Force sensitive. I understand that. But here's the counter argument. There have only been 2 individuals, Han Solo and General Grievous, that were non-Force sensitive and used a lightsaber in some capacity. Now, we can cut that number 2 down to number 1 if we consider only the individuals that have used a lightsaber in a combat role, that being General Grievous. So, how is that significant? Well, the total number of individuals to have ever used a lightsaber in a combat role in the Star Wars universe can be pretty well calculated from looking at the number of Jedi that were at the Battle of Geonosis. There were a lot of Jedi there, and the total number is, at least according to Wikipedia, at least 212. I see some variations of that number, but it's generally around 212. And we can bump that number up a little bit if we consider all the individuals that have used a lightsaber in a combat role in the Star Wars universe. And that number is generally increased by the number of Sith, which isn't that much. So how is that 212 number significant? Because these are the only individuals that have used a lightsaber in the Star Wars universe, and they were almost exclusively all Force sensitive. So, while it is not outside the realm of possibility to conclude that just because you use a lightsaber, you're not necessarily Force sensitive, the odds of that theory applying to Finn are approximately 212 to 1. Now, there are some theories that Finn is simply not Force sensitive and that he's going to die in Episode 7. I don't buy any of that for a minute. And yeah, there is some evidence to suggest that it's true. If you look at the Star Wars playing cards, Finn is not listed as a Jedi while Rey is. But this is inconclusive. You can be Force sensitive and not necessarily a Jedi. Also adding to the theory is the fact that he's absolutely terrified to take on Kylo Ren. But I think that also helps the argument that he is at least Force sensitive, because the only way that you're ever going to survive a battle with Kylo Ren is, at the very least, you are Force sensitive if you even hope to survive it. How about Rey's ability to use the Force? Clearly, to me, it seems like she's not a Jedi yet. And I think there is plenty of evidence for that. If you look at the international trailer, when Kylo Ren has a lightsaber right up to her neck, I just don't think a Jedi is going to have him or herself in that position. Also, she inquires, there are stories about what happened. Clearly she doesn't know anything about the Jedi or the dark side, and I think that's something a Jedi would know. However, I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that Rey is Force sensitive. The international TV spot nearly screams it out when it flashes just before she comes on screen every generation. I don't know what else you need to say without them actually coming out and saying it. And there's a few other fun tidbits here and there that we can consider, right? There's the Star Wars playing cards that lists her as a Jedi. There's some fun fan art out there. And then there's that Duracell TV commercial with the little kid dressed like Rey that's using the Force against a stormtrooper. And also, she lives a pretty unremarkable life. Excitement. Adventure. A Jedi craves not these things. While I don't think Rey is a Jedi, I am almost near certain that she's Force sensitive. It's really just a question of whether she is the daughter of Luke or Han and Leia. Then there is the mourning scene, and I mean mourn. The theory is that she's mourning the loss of someone, but who is to say that someone actually died there? But if there is someone who died there, I don't think it's a dead Chewbacca. There has already been a lot of analysis on this, and the analysis, which is pretty convincing, shows that the wisps that look like hair really don't match the color of Chewbacca's fur. And those cartridges that people were saying were part of his belt, Chewbacca's belt, are round. They're not square like Chewbacca's. So that's kind of a giveaway to me that that is not a dead Chewbacca. I do think, however, that she's mourning the loss of Han Solo. My evidence to support that is the shot of Rey piloting the Millennium Falcon, and also the Topps trading card showing her piloting the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca. Where is Han Solo? I think at that point he may be no longer with us. So I think what happens is that Han Solo and Rey discover their relationship and have a brief father-daughter relationship that's tragically cut short. Finally, there's the theory about Luke Skywalker and whether or not he's turned to the dark side. I think this theory is completely ridiculous. While there is some evidence to support this, namely he hasn't conclusively appeared in any of the trailers yet, and the fact that the Jedi have fallen into myth and thus he hasn't apparently passed on what he has learned, I think the evidence against that is much stronger. First, it just doesn't make any sense. The plot would not be served at all by such a reveal. There is already an apparent master and apprentice relationship between Snoke, what I think is the relationship between Snoke and Kylo Ren, and I think if you throw Luke into the mix, it would just be a third wheel. And second of all, he is not Kylo Ren. Luke is an older man, and Kylo clearly moves like a young man, and you already see that the back of Kylo Ren's head, and it looks just like Adam Driver. And also, we have Luke's word. Isn't that worth anything anymore? He's already said,
I'll never turn to the dark side.
I think what will happen is that Luke will make his appearance at the very end when Finn is about to be cut down by Kylo Ren. He's going to save his butt, and maybe even Rey's as well, unless we get an even bigger reveal that Rey is a Jedi. We'll see. That's all for today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think and comment below. Until next time, Slyck Tom out.